What's been happening, man? I haven't talked to you in a couple weeks yet. What's going on? You've been like, aging.
Yeah, I'm a big party guy, as you know. You like to call me a specific name I won't repeat, but because it's a little inappropriate. But I'm a big party guy. I've been, partying a lot and living life, living the dream, man.
Yeah, so you like the guys from Jackass. You just party almost every day. Like I'm surprised you still have a job. To be honest with you, I thought you'd be fired by now because you're partying every day. I don't know how you show up to work in the morning because you're drunk. You're going out till 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. Um, you're taking these sort of drugs. I don't know what you're doing with these drugs that you're taking. These kind of opioids and painkillers. I don't know what you're doing over there. These party drugs, and I think you're gonna get yourself into a lot of trouble here by taking these inverse agonist opioid agendants. What are you doing over there with these parties? At these parties, are you on cocaine?
I can't confirm or deny that. And I think the guy you're thinking of from Jackass is Steve-O. You think I'm Steve-O?
I think you're a cocaine cowboy who just sits around in the bathroom, snorts the cocaine. Actually, I don't even think you're a cocaine guy. I think you're a meth guy. I don't think you could afford cocaine. Uh, I think you're more of a meth head. But you got to stop partying though. Like it's not good. Once in a while you can go to a party, but you can't go to a party every day. Like every time I see you, you're walking around with a 12 pack of beer in your hand. Like you should get a sponsorship for either Bud Light or something like that because you're always walking around with a 12 pack. What's been going on? Are you
Yeah,
okay?
I'm
Are you
definitely
depressed?
not a I'm definitely not a beer guy at all. Beer's okay. I like more the White Claws and like the spiked seltzer. That's my thing now.
Of
Those
course
are
you do. Of
cool.
course
Or
you do.
the high noons. High noons are good because it's like vodka soda. But that's about it. And those are cool because you don't have to pace yourself. You can just drink as many as you want because they go down smooth. It's like you're drinking fucking soda. It's great. Like 100 calories too. So you don't really get fat. And you burn most of it off anyway. So got to exercise every day. But the best thing is, the most important thing is, I never get hungover because all I'll do is I'll just have like a nice, tall,
You
large
never get hungover.
coffee from Dunkin'. Never.
You
If
want
I
me to tell a
wake up,
story? You want me to tell a story here? About what happened to you?
oh no, I don't want to hear your
Can I
rendition.
tell
But
the
I will
story?
say this. No, I'll tell.
Can I tell the
I
story?
will tell the. I will tell the story. I'll tell it. I'll tell it. I'll tell it. I know exactly what you're gonna say. No. So, well, I never really get hungover because, well, now I don't because I just drink the White Claws and I drink High Noons pretty much exclusively. And the trick with those is that their the alcohol content is pretty low. It's like 5% or less. So you could have like, I mean, at least me, I'll have like 8 of them, 10 of them. I don't feel shit, and then I'll wake up the next morning. If I have like a slight headache or I feel slightly off, either way, I just get a nice tall coffee from Dunkin' Donuts, or I'll make one at home. I'm good to go. So it depends what the situation is. Like if I'm in a place where they don't have like a Keurig machine or like a K cup machine, then I'll just order the coffee and I'll just get it like Postmated or
Let
Uber
me ask you
Eats.
a question real
And
quick.
it's
Let
the
me ask you a
best. It's
question.
like the best $7 you'll spend in your life. It's literally the best fucking thing ever. And then you're good for the whole day.
Hold
So
on. Let me ask you a question real quick, right? You said that you drink White Claws and you drink these fruity drinks, right? After you finish from the urinal, do you also wipe?
I also wipe. What do you drink? You fuck.
After you take a piss from the urinal, do you wipe? Because
Yeah.
you're talking
Yeah.
very
I wipe.
feminine
Yeah.
right
I
now.
wipe. I wipe. I wipe on your girlfriend. That's what I do. I wipe on
I
your
wipe on your head.
girlfriend.
I wipe on your head. You,
Yeah, okay. What do you drink? You know what you do? You drink you know what I think you drink? I think you drink that like tequila, but you drink that like Kendall Jenner tequila. What is it, like 1812 or whatever it is? That's what you drink. Oh my
I don't
Casamigo,
drink because
Fogo. You drink the George
it's not
Clooney
good for your
one.
health. I'm a
Bozo.
person, right? I like to keep my mind, very free. My mind is a temple. I don't put that alcohol into my system. I think it's very bad for you, and I think you should evaluate your life choices and turn away from being an alcoholic and turn to God. But if you're gonna be
Indeed.
an alcoholic, right, don't drink that effeminate stuff like White Claw, seltzer.
Nah, it's good.
Anything with a light
It's
next to it,
very,
you drink
very
it. Like
good.
Bud Light, Coors Light. If it says light, you're drinking it.
Me, or are you just saying anyone in general?
You. If it says light next to it, you're drinking it.
No, that's not necessarily true. I don't like Miller Lite. I don't like Coors Light. I
Oh,
don't
you're a
like
light guy.
I don't like Corona Light. I like Heineken and Stella are probably my favorite beers, and those are like heavier. So Stella's really good. Stella's not like too heavy, but it's not a light beer. It's like kind of in between. But beer is good, but the problem with beer is that you get fat. So unless you want to be a fat fuck and you're looking to speed run it, probably not good to go with beer.
You like
But
Smirnoff, right?
Smirnoff, nah, Smirnoff's kind of disgusting, and the same thing with Mike's Hard. Mike's Hard's kind of disgusting too. That's what you drink when you're like 14 or like
Are you
15,
a
and you're
twisted
like
tea guy?
twisted tea. No, you probably drink that Angry Orchard thing. I bet you're one of those guys.
You
Angry
seem
Orchard,
you
that's
seem
you.
you seem like a twisted tea kind of guy. You don't seem like
Yeah,
a
okay.
pale. You don't seem like a pale ale kind of like whiskey kind of guy. You seem like a fruity margarita, Smirnoff, twisted tea. Kind
You
of
know who
kind of a
else?
gentleman.
You know who else was a big partier back in the day when he played ball? Mickey Mantle. And I just saw that his 1952 Topps card just sold. It was rated by SGC, which is very surprising. It was a 9.5 from SGC. So SGC is like that third tier rating company when it comes to sports memorabilia and sports cards. So number one is PSA, number two is Beckett, and then third is SGC. So it was a 9.5 out of 10, 1952 Mickey Mantle Topps card just sold for $12.6 million at auction. Fucking unbelievable. And it's funny because we were just talking about cards the last time, and all of a sudden now cards are fucking booming again. And I love it. So we need to see the Brady card boom. We need to see Mahomes. We need to see LeBron go up. There's a whole plethora of cards I need to fucking see go up. I need to see Jeter go up. I need to see Mahomes go up. I said him already. I need to see Shaq go up. John Morant. I need to see all these bozos go up. My Pikachu needs to fucking quadruple. It went up a little bit, but it needs to like fucking quadruple or quintuple, and then we're really booming.
What Pikachu do you have?
I have the 1999 Wizards of the Coast Gold Star Pikachu. So that Pikachu, I won't go too far into detail here because it's kind of boring, like nerd shit. But that Pikachu was given away with a copy of, I believe it was Nintendo Power or the other magazine at the time. And in 1999, Pokemon didn't pop off yet. So Pokemon only really got big in like 2000, 2001 with Gen 2. So at that point, it was before any of the major movies were out. So there wasn't a lot of hype. So these cards that were shipped with the magazine, they got fucked up when they got shipped. That's number one. Number two, most people got this card and they were like, oh, whatever. And they like fucking bent it and wiped their ass with it and did all this other shit. And then number three is people just flat out weren't interested in Pokemon, or if they got these magazines, they didn't hold on to the cards and they just fucking threw them out. So this card, it's called Wizards of the Coast. The story is that obviously Nintendo created Pokemon, right? But the thing is that they didn't own the rights to the trading card game for the longest time. So they actually had to buy the rights out from this company, Wizards of the Coast. And Wizards of the Coast is like the first company to ever make Pokemon cards. So now there's the Pokemon, it's called Pokemon TCG, Pokemon the trading card game. So now they have the rights, but it originally was owned by Wizards of the Coast, so they had to buy them out. And what they did was to honor them in, negotiating with them. They actually put these like gold stamps on certain cards. So yeah, it's a PSA 10 first edition 1999 Jungle Pikachu Wizards of the Coast gold stamp. So it's a great card. That jungle set isn't particularly rare, but that card is. There's only a few hundred of them in the world, and it's Pikachu. So it's sort of the mascot of the brand. He's the Mickey Mouse of the brand. So it's really him and Charizard are like the two biggest guys. So you can't go wrong at all. Everyone knows who Pikachu is, who's even remotely heard of or is interested in Pokemon. So you can't go
I never
wrong.
heard of Pikachu
And
before.
all right, well, I don't know what to tell you. Then I think you might have hit your head. When you went out, you had one too many beers or whatever, or one too many Smurfs,
Oh yeah, let's go
and you
back.
hit your head.
Can you tell that story about what happened?
Uh, yeah, sure. So there was one time that I went out, and me and God, we were hanging out, having a good old time, and he had one beer too many, and he ends up in the ER and he hits his head, and then
That's me, but
I've got to take care of God. I've got to nurse God back to good health, and it was a very tall task, but we managed to get it done. And I nursed him back to good health, and I had to play babysitter for about 48 hours. So that's the story.
okay. All right, let me tell the real story now because that's fabricated.
This
So
is hearsay. This is hearsay.
this guy, right? He went out to a popular area, right? A lot of people go there on spring break, as they like to say. These children, they like to go to spring break. So he went to this area and he was drinking a lot of fruity drinks, as I mentioned before. He was drinking Mike's Hard. He was drinking Smirnoff. He was
Okay,
drinking.
you
Don't
didn't say
interrupt.
you're
I
immediately
see you
wrong
on
right
click to me
away.
button. Please don't interrupt me when I'm
Yeah,
telling the
I'm
story. Thank you.
unmuting. Yes, I am. I'm unmuting.
Please don't interrupt me. So he
You
was
didn't say
drinking
you didn't get it right.
Mike's Hard. He was drinking Smirnoff. He was drinking a lot of fruity drinks, margaritas. He was mixing. He was drinking all the lights, Coors Lights, Bud Lights, all of them. So he drank a little bit too much. So what happened was he had to get kicked out of the establishment by, you know, a bouncer, as they like to say. He got kicked out of the establishment, and as he was walking after he got kicked out of the establishment, he hit his head on the concrete, and he was sent to the hospital. Then the preceding morning, he was so hungover from the hospital, he was walking around the street with one of those hospital gowns with it open in the back. It was completely open in the back. And he had no underwear on. He was walking around with the hospital gown on the street. And he looked like he
This
was
is not even close to what happened, by the way. All right, I have to tell the real story after this. This is getting nuts. Go ahead, tell your little fake story. Then I'll tell people the reality because this is just nuts. What you're doing. This is this is slanderous right here. Slanderous
yeah.
spoken
So he
libel
was
is written
walking
right.
down the street
This is
with
fucking
the hospital gown
slanderous. I'm gonna
open.
sue you. I'm gonna pull a Johnny Depp here. This is bullshit.
Hospital gown open, completely open, right? No underpants on, no nothing, just walking around in the street. He almost got arrested by the cops after that. They said, "What is going on with this guy? He's crazy." The cops let him go, and then he went home, and then he slept it off. That was basically the story where it happened.
Yeah, that was first of all, you never don't first of all, don't quit your day job. Don't become a professional storyteller because you're not good at telling stories. The other thing is that's not even remotely close to what happened. All right, so what happened was it was a Friday night, and this was at some point in September, mid September. So Friday night, I get hit up by my friends. I had work that following day, that Saturday morning through like Saturday, like kind of early afternoon, just so I could hit my time requirements or whatever for work. So I was gonna work that Saturday, right? Because work was like kind of busy. So Friday night, someone hits me up. I'm like, they're like, "Yo, you want to go out?" I'm like, "I'm down." We go out. We get a table at a place, a very fine establishment, and then we all drank a lot, right? So then I go home, no worries, go to sleep, no problems, right? I wake up early enough for work. At that point, I was working from home. Log on at like, I think I logged on like quarter to 8, 8:15, something like that. Worked for 7, 8 hours, felt pretty good. I only had like 2 hours of sleep, something like that. So I slept for 2 hours, which like really was kind of nuts. Took a shower, exercised, logged on work, whatever, did 7 or 8 hours at work. Then after that, I hang out for a little bit at home. I get my dinner, and then I go back out. So, so that was the first mistake. You
He's
don't
missing
do
about
2 days in a
85%
row
of the
like
story
that.
because he doesn't remember. He was
No, the first
Please
no,
remember.
this is
That's
all
why he's
leading up
missing
to it.
85% of the story. When he
This
was
is
in the
leading up
hospital,
to
when
it.
he got thrown
You
out.
only covered yeah, but you only covered the last from what you mentioned, that's like the last 5 hours. So I'm setting the stage. This is like the day before. So the night before we went out, whatever. I was with different people. Then the second night, one of my friends says to me, he's going away or whatever. He was going into the armed forces. So he only had like that weekend left. So I was like, all right, we're fucking going out, right? So we go to this local spot. And keep in mind, I mean, I had a lot the night before. I go out and then we just like went hard in the paint. And then one person who went ended up having to leave because he started like fountaining the water we were giving him. We started giving him water to like settle him down and he started like fountaining it. And I should have left with everyone there, but I didn't, and I stayed behind and I was hanging out with a couple other people who were in the group that decided to stay behind. That's a first mistake. You never leave the group. If one person doesn't feel good, you just you go with them. You go with the majority of the group, and you go with the people who you're closer to. So that was the first mistake right there. I think that was the lesson that I learned, and that was the most important thing that I learned from that. Is like you gotta like stay with the group, um, especially the people you're closest to, and like I said, the majority. You gotta you gotta do the right thing. And I was just being selfish, so that was like a big fucking L on my part. So then I stayed out like another hour or two. Then I went to leave, and then yeah, I mean from there, then the part that you were talking about is like fairly accurate. Um, I spent, I think I spent
Completely
like
accurate.
I spent I spent
Remember,
like
remember the part where I
my
don't
shirt.
drink, where I told you I don't drink, and so I remember the
Well,
story.
my shirt,
Completely 100%
my
correct.
I. It was a funny story though. No, because I was on like a cot, and then my shirt was cut. My shorts were missing, and I was laying on a cot in my underwear in the middle of the hallway in the ER. And then 2.5 hours, 3 hours later, I was discharged, signed myself out, and then I went to go take an Uber. And they gave me these scrubs because I'm like, well, you cut my fucking shirt and I don't have shorts. Like, I need something, right? So they give me these scrubs, and the scrubs were like two sizes too big. So I'm like, do you guys have like a medium or something, or like a small? I'm not like a big dude. So they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, do you have like a rubber band or like a fucking staple so I could like staple this shit together? And I think at that point they were just kind of done with my shit. Like they didn't want to deal with me. So they're like, no. So I'm like, okay, whatever. So like the scrubs, it was like a two-piece thing. It was not open in the back. It wasn't a gown. It was like scrub, like a doctor would throw on, right? The blue ones with like the fucking deep kind of V-neck. So I throw the big one on, and this is like a fucking, it's like I'm wearing my dad's like shirt or some shit. It's like a little kid wearing his dad's shirt. That's what it reminds me of. And then the scrubs were pretty long. So then what I did with the scrubs is that I had to like pinch the waistband of them and like hold it together so that I could walk and they wouldn't like fall on the ground. So that's what I was doing. I just kept like kind of walking and like holding the waistband of the scrubs so it wouldn't like fall around my ankles. So I was walking like that, and I walked out of the ER. And
Yeah,
this
but they
was
weren't scrubs
yeah,
though. It was one of those gowns, and it was
it
untitled.
wasn't. No, it wasn't. Stop! You're ruining the flow of the story. Come on. So yeah, these scrubs. So I'm holding the waistband, like pinching it together. I walk out. I walk out the front door of the ER or whatever, and then I like went to go take an Uber, and when I went to go take the Uber, I called it, and all I'm thinking is like, oh fuck, like this was during COVID or whatever. So I was like, this guy driving the Uber is gonna be so pissed at me because like I didn't have a mask, and at that point, up until pretty recently, you had to wear a mask in the Uber, and I didn't have a mask, and I think he saw me get out, and all of a sudden I see this guy across the street or whatever. I'm like, all right, I'll walk over there, and then he just canceled the fare right away. I'm like, oh, this fucking guy. I was like, this guy thinks I probably have COVID or some shit or whatever. And then the next guy comes, and I fucking ambushed him because I walked like a block or two away from the ER. So then by the time he showed up, I just was able to like hop in his car before he had a chance to like cancel the fare or whatever. So then he just drove me back to my friend's house, which is where I parked my car. Um, this is kind of scary that his door was unlocked because he was like, "Oh, I'll leave it unlocked for when Stunk Man comes back," and then I obviously didn't fucking come back until like 4 or 5 hours later. So it was like 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:30. I hang out in his place. I slept there for like 2 or 3 hours, and then I went home. And then that was pretty much it. And the only thing that really happened was I had like a gash. I got really lucky, but I had a gash like above my eyebrow and a little bit of swelling. And then the other thing was that the people from the people who went to bill me were retarded because I presented my insurance card. My insurance covered 99% of the cost. I think I came out of pocket like 250 or something like that, which is pretty reasonable, all things considered, because it included like the ambulance or whatever. So yeah, so it came out to like 250 or something like that. And I mean, look, that's a lot, but and it's a giant waste of money. But the lesson learned is you can't, you can't be fucking retarded. You got to know your limits. And the most important thing is that you got to stick with the group. And when one person doesn't feel great, then it's time for everyone to step up. So
Yeah.
that was my biggest takeaway. It's like,
Okay.
it's like, a lot of times I'm hanging out with God and then he gets a little carried away. So I know I got to take care of him. I got to play babysitter with him.
Yeah. The thing is,
So
though, I'm
that's like the
Muslim. I
big
don't
thing.
drink, so that's not accurate at
That's
all.
bullshit. I don't believe that at all. That's
I don't.
complete bullshit. I've
I
literally
don't
been
drink.
to I've literally been to a party at your house. Like
I
I don't
don't
know what
drink,
the
and I
fuck you're
don't
talking
gamble.
about.
I'm Muslim.
That
It's
Yeah,
haram.
okay. No, that's bullshit. He's capping. He's fucking King Kappa. He's fucking Al Capone. That's what he is. Al Capone.
It's haram.
He's Al Capone.
What you're saying is haram. But anyway,
Yeah,
like
okay.
what the story
Yeah,
you kind of gave
this
was
guy texts me all the time. He's like, "Yo, you gotta do check out my parlay, bro. I missed a $50,000 parlay by like one bet." He'll go, there's a promo. You gotta do this promo. Like, yo, they're gonna comp me XYZ. Like, this guy's so crazy. This guy's such a degenerate that they keep comping him all the time. You really have to be losing a lot of money to start getting free shit like that. They don't give the free shit to the winners. They give the free shit to the losers because they're like, oh, give him a $200 ticket to a game, and then he'll put another 10K in, and that's what this guy does. That's how he gets comped. Total degenerate. I've seen it. He throws parties at his house. He thinks he's like Gatsby or whatever, walking around. He's got the pool. This guy thinks he's Gatsby, and he's a total bozo. He's a total fraud. Definitely not a Muslim like me, and definitely not a man of God.
yeah, the story you kind of gave was a little bit inaccurate, but I'll let it go. My side of the story was more accurate. Anyway, so you were at this nightclub when this happened, and did you see this nightclub in Australia? Australia is really crazy. Like what they did in 2019. Now what they're doing now is this nightclub called Club 77 in
Okay.
Darlinghurst, Sydney. I don't really know much about nightclubs because I don't really go to nightclubs, as I said
I
earlier.
like the scene. The
I don't.
scene's
I don't.
good. It's a good scene, but you got to get a table and you got to hang out with like a bunch of people. That's where
Yeah,
the
I
fun
don't
is.
drink and I don't gamble.
Yeah, well, that's
I
what I'm
don't drink
telling
and
you.
I don't
That's where the
gamble.
fun is.
Since
You have
I'm
to get a table, otherwise it's fucking lame because you're just walking around the whole time like a retard.
Yeah, I don't drink and I don't gamble since I'm Muslim, as I said. But this Club 77 in Sydney, uh, there's this new policy that this owner enacted, and he's kind of this ugly guy. He's this bald, ugly guy, the owner of the club. So it makes sense why he enacted this policy. And this policy that he enacted is you cannot stare at another person without their prior verbal consent. And if you stare at the person, right, without their prior verbal consent, the police will be called because you are violating their safety and harassment policy. And these club officers that walk around in pink vests will be enforcing this rule. And you will be escorted out by an officer in a pink vest and with these kind of like wands that these traffic people wave. They'll be waving it at you to notify you of the violation, and you will be escorted out. What do you have to think about this safe space that this Club 77 is providing? Because I can look at this as two ways. It's protecting women, right? But it also seems a little bit extreme of what's going on here. So, what are your thoughts? Since you're big on the nightclub scene, so you probably have a lot of thoughts about this.
So I guess what could, in their like opinion or their guidelines, what like constitutes staring? Like, how long do you have to look at someone for it to be like staring? Because like, what if you're
Staring.
just looking around the room, or you got like a fucking lazy eye? You know what I mean? Like, where do you draw the line? Like, how? Like, what if you're looking around the room and then you just make eye contact with
You
someone?
you want me
Like, I
to?
don't
I
understand
could
it.
tell you what the line is, right? So
Yep.
staring is when is more. It's more than 2 seconds, right? For any sort of ugly guy. And if you're not ugly, right, it could be you could look for 10 minutes. That's how how it goes. So it's
Yeah,
based off of
you're not
if you're
wrong.
ugly, you're not.
You're not wrong.
That's how it's perceived if you're staring. If you're staring and you're ugly, then it's considered sexual harassment. If you're staring and you're not ugly, then you could stare for 20 minutes and it won't be considered sexual harassment. That's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, that whole ruling is very odd. I don't agree with it at all. I could get where they're coming from. Um, but at the same time, like I don't know, like if it's different for women. Like if I'm walking around, I'm in public, whatever, and people are fucking staring at me, like I don't think anything of it. I'm just like, oh, these people are like fucking drug addicts or some shit. It's like not that interesting. Like I don't know why these people are fucking looking at me. But I guess if you're a chick, it's different. Like you feel more of a threat, or it's like a safety thing. But to have people walking around doing that is like kind of dumb. Because I mean, let's be real. Like most chicks, when they go out, like they'll go out with like a group of people, and there'll be some guys there. Like I don't know. I would think like at least if I went out with like one of the groups I go out with, like if any of the girls were like really kind of bothered by someone or bothered by something that someone did, they would kind of tell us as the guys, and then we'd like kind of straighten it out, with not even necessarily getting into like any like physical altercation, but just like we'd fucking straighten it out real quick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but
So
you know
I
why the
don't
rule
know.
is stupid? The rule is stupid because why do women go to nightclub, right? Nightclubs in the first place. They go to nightclubs to get attention. So if you stop people from
I don't
staring,
necessarily agree with that. I think that that is the case for a lot of women, but not all. Because like a lot of women will go and they'll just go hang out with their friends. They like the music, they like the
blah blah
atmosphere.
blah
Like
blah blah blah
no,
blah.
that's no, but I'm telling you, like if you go with a group, right? Like I go out with like a pretty big group every time, and like some of the girls that go out with us, like they're hanging out with us. Like you know what I mean? They're not going to like meet anyone else.
Wait,
They're
I
just
have a
hanging out with
question.
us.
Are they 304?
You mean 305? 305 is Miami. That's what you're saying, right?
No. Are they 304s? That means are they hoes?
Well, well, it's 305. 305 is Miami. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I would say that that's a really good question. I think it depends on the chick. Like some chicks kinda, yeah, sure, definitely. But then some of them not really. But some of them will go just because their friends are going. That happens a lot. Like people will go to things because other people are going and they don't even necessarily want to go and they feel kind of weird about it. So I think that's what happens a lot.
Yeah, see,
I don't
I
think
don't
it's
really.
necessarily like you got to understand. Like I'm actually not, I like going to some of these places, but I only like it because I have like a group of people I know that I could talk to and I know I can trust. And I'm actually naturally more kind of like introverted when it comes to those things. Like I'm not going to go out of my way to talk to people I don't know. I actually prefer not to talk to people I don't know. So which is why I like the whole idea of getting a table because you're with people you know, and I probably wouldn't go if I didn't get a table. So, that's where I stand on that. But I know that some people are just naturally more introverted, but they'll still go and hang out in those situations just because of like the proximity and the relationships they have with their like friends. So they're like, "Oh, I'm going with my friend, so like it's tolerable. Like I could do it." It's not like they actually want to go to like meet and talk to random people. I think a lot of people, if you actually look around, it's not really like a lot of random people talking to each other. It's mostly like people go as like a group. It's like they already have their squad that they're with, and they're not really looking to meet or talk to new people. It's a lot of fucking people like that. I'd say it's probably like a good. It's definitely the minority, but I'd say it's like probably a good like 30-40% of people.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense, but I don't necessarily agree with what you said earlier. You were saying like that they don't go for attention; they go to just hang out and have a girls'
Not
night out.
everyone.
If
No,
that was
no.
the
I'm saying
case, right?
I'm saying
That was
that
the
no, no.
case.
That I'm
Why don't
not
they go
saying.
to their friend's house and knit a sweater? Knitting
Well,
is a very
that's not
it's a very
fun.
good
That's not.
hobby. A lot of people knit. Why wouldn't you just go and knit? Knit a nice sweater, give it to your grandparents. Be a respectful person. You could go knitting. You could do hobbies like that. You could crochet. You could do a lot of different hobbies. You could play bingo.
Yeah, you're naming hobbies for 80-year-olds right now. But no, my thing is that I'm not saying that it's everyone. I said that although I typically do agree with like your opinion, You were saying that you think that it's pretty much everyone. I think that it's probably about 30-40% tend to agree with me, where they're just there because of proximity. And I think that it's like a 60-40 split. The 60% is there for the attention, the 40% is there for like proximity, and basically there because their friends are there. That's what I've seen. And that's what kind of seems to hold true. And really what it comes down to is like you want to find like that 40%, like the people that are there because it's their friend's birthday and they were invited, and like if they don't go then they look bad, so they're like, fuck, I don't want to go to this, but like I have to go. Like that's what you should shoot for. Like, you know, anyone that falls in like that 40% ratio, that's where it matters. Because you got to understand, like, you know, some of these girls, like, they get fucking like weird with shit. They'll fucking, you know, if you are invited to a situation to go out and you don't go and it's someone's birthday, they take like everything personally and then they hold grudges. So you're almost in a way like, you know, especially if it's people you have to deal with, like at work or whatever the case may be, you kind of like have to go for it's like political reasons and shit. And you don't have to like, you know, be super sociable, but at least if you go, then it's kind of like people won't really look at you differently, I guess. I don't know. It's just weird. I
Wise
mean,
words.
I'm
Wise
not that
words
type
from
of
the simp.
person. What?
Wise words from the simp.
No, I'm definitely not. Not at all. Not by any stretch of the imagination. But no, my main thing is that what did you say before? Girls' night out or some
No,
shit?
I was gonna say, you know,
Because I don't believe
I
in
was kind
that.
of
I don't. I think that's dumb. I think that's pretty retarded. Like girls' night
yeah,
out.
I was
That's
kind
kind
of
of
joking
dumb.
around though. You know,
Oh
I was kind of joking around, as you can tell, like, you know, when I mentioned crochet and bingo and all that.
yeah.
But you know, these safety officers, they're actually getting paid. I think they were getting paid $25 an hour to flag down the people that were staring and waving the light. They get paid $25 an hour to flag anybody that's inappropriately staring. That sounds like a good gig. I might move to Australia and take that gig.
Yeah, Australia is just like a retarded country. I hate to say it, but it really is. Like for the people who are descendants of prisoners, you know, because Australia was a penal colony. I mean, these people are like the biggest pussies on the planet. Like they ban violent video games, they ban violent music, they ban violent movies. Like they're afraid of everything. They really are, and it's pretty pathetic. I mean, everything there wants to kill you. You'd think that there are some type of people who are hardened, but apparently not. All these people are fucking vaginas, and they complain about everything. They have a problem with everything. Like total gun control. They're afraid of guns. It's like kind of sad. I don't know. They're not hardened people at all, considering that they're, like I said, they're the descendant of prisoners. It doesn't really make much sense at all. But no, I think the main thing is like that nightclub thing. I guess just to kind of wrap this up, it just seems like such a stupid fucking thing to do. And you know, you have bouncers, right? You have people kind of patrolling and walking around. You don't need to give these bozos a pink vest or whatever. That's just extra overhead and extra administrative costs for no reason. You have a bouncer. If people are acting weird, or if someone says something, if someone feels so uncomfortable to say something to the bouncer, then guess what? The bouncer's just gonna throw the fucking person out, or the bouncers. You know, if you go to like 11 or you go to like live in like Miami and you do some like weird shit, like they'll fucking throw you out in a minute. They don't give a fuck. And that's like the best places. That's what they do because they know that if you're not there, it's going to be someone else. So they don't care. It's really like, it's not a right that you get in. It's more of like a privilege to them because of the demand. Like there are so many people trying to get in these places that they literally don't need you and they don't need your money because you're replaceable. So in those situations, they'll definitely throw you out if you're doing some weird shit or you're just being just like a dork. Like they don't want people like that in their establishment because they're like very high respected and like very well esteemed. So they don't want any losers in there or any L nerds, as you said before.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely should be thrown out, but yeah, Australia is just a weird place, you know, with the nightclubs and then you know the gun issue. They don't let you have a gun, but the United States is becoming more and more like Australia each and every day. You know, we see recently the ATF or the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Agency, they're banning the FRT 15 trigger, also known as the Tommy trigger, and they're saying that the trigger is actually makes a semi-automatic weapon into a machine gun, which is totally false and totally not true. You have to pull the trigger one time for one bullet. It's not a machine gun, and they're going around to people's houses and they're confiscating these triggers, and they halted the production and sales of the trigger, and now they're going around from house to house to confiscate these triggers, and they're violating the Fourth Amendment by entering people's properties and seizing their property. And I don't even know how they're getting these lists to prove that that these people have the triggers. So they must be yeah, I don't know how they got the list. They must be going to the manufacturers, or they're going to these shops and forcing them, subpoenaing them to give them the list. But it's awfully odd how they have a list of everybody who has this trigger, and they're going around. The ATF's going around and they're confiscating it. And there's lawsuits going around, and I think this is eventually probably going to go to the Supreme Court because they're violating the Fourth Amendment and they're violating the Second Amendment with the confiscation and seizure of these triggers. And it's totally wrong because the FRT trigger, it only shoots one round per pull, and the trigger forces the gun to reset back to the original setting. So it's total nonsense that the ATF is saying that it makes guns from semi-automatic to a machine gun. It's just totally false and totally not true. And this is a violation of our rights that the Constitution gives us. It's not a two action trigger. It's a single action trigger. So this is ATF is it's being politicized, and with the president that we have in office now, he's weaponizing the ATF and he's using it to basically become a fascist and gain more and more power over everyday citizens and taking their liberties and freedoms away. We see that with the this ATF situation we have now, and he's basically doing it because of all of these mass shootings, I say, that are supposedly happening. But you notice that when a Republican's in office, there's not a lot of mass shootings, and when a Democrat's in office, there is a lot of mass shootings. So it just shows that it's a politicized issue, and they report on what they want to report on, and that it's not as big of a deal as is being shown in the media, and that guns, massively protect people, and they save more and more people from, being victimized every day than are victimized by the gun. It's not the gun that commits the crime; it's the person. And Joe Biden is a fascist. He's an asshole. You see that with the student loans. He violated the Constitution there by eliminating student loans and not going through Congress. And we saw this during the time of Mr. Trump. They said he was a fascist, but when you point one finger at somebody, three point back at you. The true fascist is Joe Biden, and he's violating the Constitution on the daily. I never seen somebody violate the Constitution more than him. I think Joe Biden should go to Ken Griffin's house to have dinner, and he should read a copy of the Constitution that Ken Griffin has and learn something about what the Constitution says and follow it. If he can truly read and understand at his level. I know he has dementia. He might have to keep reading the first line because he keeps forgetting it. And I don't know if he'll ever be able to get through the document because he reads the second line. He'll have to go back to the first because he forgot it. But if he can do it, I think he should sit down with Ken Griffin and read the Constitution.
Yeah, so that's a big thing is I don't really know too much about um what was it called? The FRT trigger. I don't really know much of anything about that. But I will say this, for them to obtain a list of all the people who have it, it's very troubling. I mean, I would think it's not like rifles, right? Like if you buy a rifle, there's a serial number. You buy it, right? You have a license in certain states. It's pretty easy to track. The gun manufacturer knows where they sold the rifle. They know what retail places it was sold, and then the retail outlet itself, whether that's Walmart, Dick's Sporting Goods, Cabela's, etc. They know who they sold the rifle to or the gun to. So it's very easy to track that way. But now, as an attachment for like a trigger attachment, I don't know. I wonder
Well,
how
trigger
they would be able to
attachments.
get that. There probably is a serial number, I would imagine, but
No, trigger
I would
attachments
think
have to be registered as well. Certain trigger attachments have to be
that
registered
makes
with
sense.
the
That
ATF.
definitely makes sense. Yeah. So then, okay, so then they do have serial numbers then, like a gun would. That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, look, I've been around guns. Um, I more like the crossbows and stuff like that, and the crossbows have serial numbers, and it's pretty easy to track. But I just prefer the crossbows. I think they're a little bit cooler than rifles. Rifles are fun, but I think the crossbows are a little cooler, and they're much more like customizable. Like you could customize the broadheads you put on and stuff like that. If you use it for hunting, scopes, stuff like that. I mean, you could do that with a rifle. You could just swap the scope out, but nonetheless, I like the crossbows because you could just change the broadheads to different types. But and you could also use it for like target practice or whatever. But no, so the main thing is like, you know, clearly it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment, which protects against unreasonable search and seizure, and very clearly it's a violation of the Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms. And truth be told, I think that we see this a lot. Um, the pendulum will swing from one side to the other. George Hagel talks a little bit about this. He says the pendulum will swing from one extreme to the other before finding some type of midpoint that's acceptable for society and for the general public at large. And, we're starting to see sort of this reactionary leftist policy that's being undertaken. And now it looks like the IRS is being weaponized by being granted the use of deadly force. We're seeing the ATF being weaponized. We're seeing the FBI being weaponized more recently in specifically raids. And, this is typically what happens. The left will go after the right, and the right will go after the left. And this is kind of, what happens with the changing of the guard and with, certain bozos and yahoos in office that will allow this stuff to happen. And, they don't understand this, these people, because they're very low IQ. They're not very smart. They graduate near the bottom of their class in law school. They think that the best way to prevent themselves or to really prevent people from dying in a hurricane is to get vaccinated, of course. They think that there are more gun deaths in the United States than there are people. They think Corn Pop was a bad dude. They like when little kids play with their leg hair when they're a lifeguard at the community pool that they served at. They lie and say they graduated at the top of their class in law school. And they openly supported prison reform bills, in quotes, that actually put more people of color away in the mid to late 80s into the 90s. And then they want to sit here and pretend like they've done a lot in terms of prison reform when they haven't done anything. They want to secretly continue building the wall that Trump was building and yet have no media coverage for it. And, they want to have open borders. They want to have drugs pour in. They want to have people who shouldn't be here and criminals who shouldn't be here run amok. And, this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with incompetence at the highest level. Flat out. That's just truthfully what it is. And we're dealing with people who they don't really care. Their kids are on the board of Ukrainian oil and natural gas companies, even though they have no oil and natural gas background. We have leaked emails talking about 10% to the big man being the president. And, this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with corruption at the highest level. We're dealing with systemic corruption. And it really is both parties. Like, it really is. For every Biden and for all these other schmucks, you have a Jeb Bush, you have a George Bush, you have Mitch McConnell, you have Mitt Romney. These assholes are on both sides, and we got to get rid of them. And until we get rid of them, there's going to be problems. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's total complete nonsense. And I just wanted to give a word of advice to these people who may or may not have these triggers, right? If the ATF comes to your house, make sure you don't sign a 3400.1 form, which is basically the consent to basically destruct the property and waive your property rights, and only sign a 3400.23, which basically means that you acknowledge that they took your property, and make sure you don't sign that 3400.1 form, because what I think is going to come down to, I think this is just basically a threat, and this is basically coercion. And I think once it gets challenged by the Supreme Court, it's not going to hold up. Just like the vaccine mandate didn't hold up when it got challenged in the Supreme Court. This won't hold up, and the student loan fiasco won't hold up once it reaches the Supreme Court as well. So what they do is they try and threaten you and they try and coerce you to willingly give it up. because it takes time for the courts to challenge the notion and for it to go through the Supreme Court and for it to be ruled constitutional or not constitutional. So you have to just stick up for your rights and basically don't acknowledge or don't not acknowledge that you have this trigger on you. If anybody comes to your property, just say, I currently don't have a trigger like that. I must have lost it on a boating trip, or I must have lost it. I don't have a trigger like that, and just don't admit or don't deny that you have this FRT trigger. But yeah, I watched. I just recently discovered this YouTuber. He's called The Collector. He's a pretty good. It's a pretty good YouTube channel. He shows all different like guns that he has. He has a complete collection. He's got like the guns from the John Wick movie. You know, with the hotel or whatever, where like you can't. I don't know if you saw that movie. It's like they go to a hotel and you can't fight while they're in the hotel. He's got the couch and everything from the movie. He's got like a whole
Oh,
bunch of like crazy guns.
pretty cool. But I will say this just as a closing point to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, and just as a general PSA, and I tell people this all the time and they think I'm nuts. Google civil forfeiture. It is the most unconstitutional, the most ridiculous rule ever. It's basically a license for law enforcement or people within authority, within government, that being the FBI, IRS, etc., to be able to seize your assets, seize cash that you have in, in an attempt to stop what they suspect to be criminal activity. So now, what do they suspect to be criminal activity? Well, it's pretty subjective. If you're driving late at night and you get pulled over and the cops search you and they find $2,000 in your car or $3,000 in your car, even if you're a wealthy person or you're just someone who likes to carry a large amount of cash on you at any given time, the cops are well within their right, according to the laws, to use civil forfeiture to seize that money. And if someone takes like,
Right.
especially a cop, if the cop takes like 2 or 3 grand, you're not going to sue them for 2 or 3 grand because the amount you're going to pay in legal fees is going to be exorbitantly more than that. So
Did
of
you see the
course, if
army
you have a lot
veteran?
of
He
cash
got
on
eighty
you,
thousand confiscated by the
they're going to
cops.
take.
Did you see the
Who?
army veteran who went to the bank and he took out his life savings and he got all his money confiscated by the cops under the
Are you
civil?
serious?
Yeah,
Yeah, this is
like a
this is
recent
what we have
story.
to deal with. Yes, civil forfeiture. It is the most ridiculous thing. It is blatantly unconstitutional. And let's be real, there are a lot of people, specifically some cops, who will take the money and if they take 3 grand from you or 4 grand from you, right? What do? They'll say, oh, okay. They'll say, oh well, they'll take 4 grand from you and then they'll report it on the paperwork and they'll say, oh, we seized $2,000 from him, and then they just pocket the other 2 grand in cash. And who's gonna stop that? Who's gonna corroborate him? The guy will take of your 4 grand. The guy will take two. He'll take 1 grand for himself. He'll take 1 grand for his partner. And who's there to stop them? No one. So this is something that you got to watch out for. The civil forfeiture thing is fucking bullshit, and people need to wake up about that. And this is why you need to carry credit cards. This is why you need to carry the only cash you should be carrying is the amount you're willing to lose at any point in time. Other than that, you should not carry anything in excess of that for as long as you can help it. This is why you need Bitcoin. This is why you need bank accounts. This is why you need like money kind of spread around, and you want to own assets too, and you want to own assets that people can't really seize from you. So that's where Bitcoin and some crypto comes into play, and other things like that. But this is what we're dealing with, though. We're dealing again with like a very blatantly corrupt system where the law enforcement and like you said, the ATF and a lot of these other agencies, policing agencies, if you want to call them that for a lack of a better term, are weaponized against their political adversaries. And it's done by both parties, and it's done extremely frequently whenever there's a change of the guard in the political system. So it's just a fucking joke, and it's a
Yeah,
shame. It really
I
is a
call
shame.
them I call them agencies of the Third Reich. That's what I refer to them as. And I'm sick of these people walking around saying, "Oh, why do you need a gun like that? Why do you need AR-15? Do you really need that if an intruder comes into your home? Like, are these people brain dead? Have they not read the Constitution? Do they not understand history of like of America and how we were a colony of Britain and we were under their control, and then we had to separate from Britain to gain our freedom. What makes you think that a tyrannical government won't eventually exist in our society going down 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 900 years from now? We saw that with COVID. There was a little bit of tyranny, and as time goes on, there will be more and more tyranny that happens, and guns protect the people from a tyrannical government. And a lot of people think that's crazy. Oh, do you really think the government's going to come down and have tyranny? Yes, eventually, if a person gets in power, which the probability is, if eventually a person might be power hungry going down the line, every 4 years we re-elect somebody else. Eventually there's going to be a person that's crazy and that's going to want to take control. And the having a society that has people filled with weapons is going to protect the public from the potential tyranny that may arise. And it's not only for hunting purposes. The Constitution mentions it's for tyrannical governments, and we have a right to protect ourselves. And these they shouldn't be they shouldn't be regulated, and they shouldn't be banned because they might cause mass shootings. But I mean, it's a highly politicized issue, and it's not as serious as people make it out to be. The answer isn't to ban it; it's to have more security checks, have more background checks, have more security in the building, and that's it. That's the answer. The answer isn't to just ban the weapons in that regard. And you see this high politicization also that's been going on in the Navy SEALs, and this is going on around in all parts of our society today. What's going on with this? We're politicizing or making society worse. We're degrading it. A Navy SEAL recently died, which is a terrible, tragic thing. He died during training, and as people know, the Navy SEAL program is a very stringent program. It's very difficult. There's a Hell Week where you have to stay up basically the whole week, and you go through different training protocols. You have to lift logs. You have to go underwater and like tread water. Your hands tied behind your back for a certain period of time. You have to. It's like crazy. Demands a crazy amount of physical fitness. So when you go into a program like that, you have to understand that there's a chance that you might die. You might because it's you're pushing your body to the limits, and if you want to be a SEAL, there's a chance that you might die. So you should know that going into the program. The program can't be made softer. This program is meant for the strongest of the strongest. It's one of our elite forces, and we can't afford to weaken the program because of some political backlash because a person died. When you sign up for the program, you know that there's a potential that you might die. I do think that there should be people on staff should be better prepared for what's going on and evaluate the people for hypothermia, or evaluate the people for any kind of medical injuries and such like that, which I'm sure they are doing. But yeah, I think they're trying to make these. I think this might be a foreign effort to try and make our military weaker through these highly political social media ads and campaigns, so that we weaken our program and then we can be attacked from a foreign entity. And this is like very sad what's going on. And we saw that first when they wanted to weaken the demands to like have women in these special force units. Now we're seeing it when they want to weaken, and that didn't work out. So now they're trying to weaken it through, the politicization of SEAL dying, and they're kind of weaponizing and his death, which is very sad. And taking they're not taking his death serious, and they're going against what he probably would have wanted in that regard. And the mother, I think, even the mother is suing the Navy SEALs, which is totally, totally out of line. She's suing the Navy SEALs because she said, "Oh, they didn't like take care of him, they didn't respect him," and that's totally out of line. Her son wouldn't have wanted her to do that, and she's totally crazy. And she's looking for a payday, and she's basically getting paid over her son, which is egregious. And I think the mother should probably be thrown in jail for her actions in this regard because she's a total loony bin.
And what you're referring to, that training, it's called BUDS. So BUDS is Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training. A lot of ex-Navy SEALs talk about this or have spoken about this extensively. Jocko Willink probably being the most prominent. He does talk about Buds a little bit, but I would say he's probably the most prominent SEAL alive now. Him, Jesse Ventura, who was a wrestler and also former governor of Minnesota. David Goggins is another guy that comes to mind. And then I would say probably most notably, posthumously, is Chris Kyle, the late Chris Kyle from American Sniper. And, Buds is very difficult. As you mentioned, you carry logs. They also do what you were talking about with your hands tied behind your back and bobbing up and down in the water. That's called drown proofing. They also will do situations where they'll throw a trench knife at the bottom of the pool. They'll tie your hands behind your back. They'll tie your feet together, and you have to pick up the knife and with your feet and cut the bindings that are tied to your legs, and then use the knife with your feet to cut, the bindings that are holding your hands together. It gets crazy. Like, there's a lot of shit that goes on. You're sleep deprived the entire week of Hell Week. You probably get about maybe 2 or 3 hours of sleep that entire week. All these guys are sleep deprived. Buds is usually in the dead of the winter, so you're freezing your fucking ass off in that cold ass water. It's hard. There's a lot of shit that can go wrong, and shit does go wrong. A lot of guys get medical discharges. A lot of guys, they don't make it through the program. The whole thing is you ring the bell and then you're done. And that's like you kind of tell everyone that you're a bitch and you quit. At least that's how the guys that made it through make it seem. And there unfortunately are situations where people will die, like if they enter these programs. But this is the reality of it. This is the most elite task force and the most elite division and subdivision of the United States military. It's really the SEALs, Delta Force, which is more of the Army side. And the Marines are up there too. But it's really, it's probably in this order. It's probably SEALs. I would say number one, very selective, incredibly hard to get into. I would say SEALs, Delta Force, and then like Green Berets. And that's probably the order if I had to rank them for top 3. And most SEALs that actually see combat, they don't make it. A lot of people talk about the SEALs and they think of Chris Kyle, or they think of a guy like Jocko, who's been around and he served in Ramadi in Iraq, which was pretty much the hot spot of the Iraq war. He was in Ramadi in 2003 and 2004, where they were trying to secure buildings and working alongside Iraqi friendlies who did not speak English, and they'd have to clear buildings with them, which is pretty fucking scary. Because these guys were pretty, the Iraqis, they didn't know, they don't know English, right? So you're going to clear a building, and you're telling them like, all right, take point or whatever, or like, you fucking check the left side, I'll check the right. Like, they don't know what the fuck you're saying. So obviously they were kind of set up for failure with that. These buildings were getting striked too, bombed or whatever the case may be. So, this is the heat of the war. This is like peak war. And most of these guys, most of the SEALs, they don't make it. And that's really what it is. These guys will make it through Hell Week. They're mentally tough. But a lot of the guys who have served will tell you that Hell Week and Buds and whatever is a fucking cakewalk compared to what you see on the battlefield. So, so it's very sad. It's very disheartening when you hear about people unfortunately dying or having any type of like medical discharging. But it's like signing up to be an NFL player. Everyone involved knows the stakes. They know that something could happen that will potentially change your life for the worse. And it kind of comes with the game. You can't expect to play in the sandbox and not get sand on you. That's just how it works. So for this guy's family to do that, I think they're out of line. I think that they need to respect the decision their son made, and unfortunately, there are consequences that are grave and dire and are life altering. And in this case, it was, he paid the ultimate price, but he made the decision to go in there as a full-fledged adult, knowing that can happen. There are people who die. It doesn't happen as often as the media wants it to seem, but every couple of years someone dies in buds, and whether they die of a cardiac arrest because of the cold water, hypothermia you mentioned, it does happen, and it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens every couple of years. Someone dies, and it's sad. It's really fucking sad. Now, as far as people who are there actively monitoring and maintaining, there are medical officials there on standby. There are people watching the whole time, and these people are well trained. So I'm sure they did everything they could to try to save them and prevent anything from happening, but unfortunately, they didn't get it done.
Yeah, and I was reading something in the news. This is totally stupid and asinine what they were saying. They were saying more people died in buds than in actual Navy SEAL combat, which is totally ludicrous. I don't believe that's
Completely wrong.
statistic at all.
Completely wrong. Completely wrong. The figure is anywhere from 65 to 75% of SEALs that see combat within 5 years they die in combat. That's the figure. It's the majority of SEALs that see combat within the first 5 years of serving, they die.
Yeah, I
Which is
believe this
crazy.
was on CNN too. They were saying more people died in buds than in actual Navy SEAL combat, which didn't make sense at all. I don't know why they would say something like that.
Completely wrong, and I would expect nothing less from a network that's blatantly lied in the past and has been sued on numerous occasions for lying in the past. And this is not even a partisan thing. They're fucking full of shit, and everyone knows that they're full of shit. They sensationalize headlines. They're a 24-hour news network. They need clicks. They'll say anything for the clicks. You could look this up. The majority of SEALs die within the first 5 years of service, and that's what it is. And it's sad. It's very sad. But like I said, these guys, they know that, guess what? They're the first guys in. They're the guys dispatched to go on the craziest missions. They're the guys that are dispatched to protect U.S. ambassadors, and that's what it is. And you know what? They want to serve. They want glory. They maybe want fame, and maybe they want money. And guess what? That's what they choose, and that's it. If that's the life you choose, and something bad happens, and you're very well aware that something bad could happen, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe it wasn't the path for you then, and you fucked up, and you made the wrong decision, and for that I can empathize. But to sit here and point the finger at other people is asinine.
I mean, they just completely and totally lied about what's going on. And what I think is true, and I looked around and everything like that. I think 9 people died in buds, and they usually die during the drown proofing section of training of buds. So maybe they should have more staff um, during that training section to make sure nothing goes wrong in that regard. Maybe have an extra 1 or 2 people available in case somebody goes down and drowns. But yeah, I think this is just like this is propaganda being put out to make our army weaker, and it's probably coming from straight from Moscow, straight from Russia. This propaganda that's coming out.
I just found something from 2017, a little dated here, but it says the majority of American combat fatalities since 2015 have been U.S. special operations. So it mentions the Green Berets, it mentions the SEALs, it mentions the 75th Ranger Regiment, it mentions Delta Force. Like, this is what I'm saying, dude. These people, they're blatantly pushing these fucking lies. Here you go. A military helicopter was shot down in eastern Afghanistan, killing 31 U.S. special operations, most of them from elite Navy SEAL programs. Like, this happens all the time. There's 31 people right there in 2011. So what the fuck are they talking about? Oh, the majority of Navy SEAL deaths has been during buds. Oh, really, dumbass? You think so? 31 people died, helicopter shot down.
First of all, it doesn't even
They
make
fucking
logical sense that most of the deaths come from buds. That doesn't even make any logical sense whatsoever.
No, of course not. Of course not. You know what the odds are of dying when you go into a building and it's rigged to blow up? 100%. You know what the odds are that you're in a fucking Humvee or you're in a helicopter, and if you're in the helicopter you get shot down, or you're in a Humvee and you drive over a fucking IED and it blows up the car. Like that happens all the time in the Middle East. These IEDs, these guys, they make these an IED is an improvised explosive device. They plant it on a bridge or they'll plant it under a road, and they'll bury it in the sand or whatever, and then they'll fucking just set it off, and they'll kill everyone driving by. And it happens all the time. That's what the Ukrainians are doing in Russia, and it's crazy. And speaking of Russia, there was this huge revelation that was discovered. So the Kremlin got caught, and this is big time. So the Kremlin got caught giving money to U.S. campaigns and funneling it into the United States illegally through shell operations and shell companies, donating to political candidates, and the amount that they found was in excess of $200 million. So people want to talk about, foreign interference in elections and Russian interference in the election and China interference in the election. This is what they're doing. They're donating money to these candidates and they're playing both sides. This has been going on since day one. This is what I've been screaming about from the rooftops, that Russia will just go out of their way to just manipulate our election. But they won't do it in a way where they hack anything or whatever the case may be. No, they'll just use the guise of democracy to be able to fund both sides of the coin. And it's just unbelievably incredible. And when you think about it, it's just a total joke. Like, how this even happens is pretty ridiculous to me. I just really can't understand how anyone is even allowed to get money from Russia or any of these other companies in this capacity. It's just very mind-blowing to me. Does not make any sense at all. And truthfully, it should be treasonous to accept money from foreign entities like this, especially in the case of you or the entity that you are related to. In some capacity receives either grant money from the government or some type of tax credit or anything like that. It should be treasonous for you to accept money from a foreign entity, because you're basically putting their needs above that of your own country and your own constituents.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how prevalent these foreign interference in elections is. It obviously happens. It happens in every election, worldwide. It happens. You see what happening most likely in Israel. Palestine's probably trying to interfere with their election. It happens probably in the United States, Russia, and trying to probably interfere with our election. Probably happens reverse with us trying to interfere with Russia's election. If there even is an election there, I don't even know. Or China's election, there probably isn't. There probably isn't even elections there. They're probably fake elections. Yeah, I think worldwide, countries have a motive to interfere with other countries' elections, so that when it comes to foreign policy, you want somebody in there that's going to benefit you and benefit your country, and it makes total sense why somebody would want to interfere with your election. But you have to do the most that you can do to prevent any sort of foreign state from interfering in your election. And you have to try and put an end to it. And you should, make sure you track where the money's coming from. Make sure it's only coming from U.S. citizens. It shouldn't be coming from outside sources. And maybe you should stop donations from coming in, completely. Even to level the playing field. Basically, don't allow donations at all. Then you can't have any sort of interference, and basically require these TV networks to give any sort of political candidate free coverage on their network, and then everybody has a level playing field, and it can't be influenced by money to buy ads and such. Everybody's on TV. Everybody who's running is on the radio. Everybody is doing this, and then if these companies, these TV channels or these radio channels want to run, basically make that a prerequisite or a requirement for doing business. And that's probably a better way of doing things than allowing money to influence and interfere in your election. But yeah, this is happening worldwide. We saw even recently we saw Israel asking Russia to prevent the interference in their election. As I mentioned earlier with Palestine, And this is just it's a wide prevalent issue of Russian interference. This was a common issue in 2016 and even recently in the 2020 election. And that's it just happens. Interference is bound to happen, and you should try and limit it. But I don't think you're ever going to completely stop any sort of foreign interference in your elections. And I think people, it's not like they're controlling it or they're doing something that's um, totally inappropriate. They're just they're putting out ads and they're influencing the minds of people. And I think, when it comes down to it, the people of the country should be smart enough to decide what's right, and they shouldn't be so easily influenced by an ad, so easily influenced by a speech, or so easily influenced by a campaign. So this sort of election interference is just basically, putting out ads and such. So they're not basically controlling the election by any means, by like rigging the machines or hacking the machines. That would be a much more egregious offense. That would be something like serious. That's actual interference. They're just doing it, indirectly through like influencing the minds of people. And I think people should be smarter to realize what's best for their country, and they shouldn't be so easily influenced. And that's, that takes some work. Um, but I think foreign interference, it's a widely politicized issue, and I think it's made out to be more than it actually is. I think the people, should be able to decide who they want, and they're not so easily influenced. So it's not as big of a deal as people think it is.